Blade Talk with Scab and Joe.
The American experiment requires us all to push the boundaries.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Blade Talk with Scab and Joe. Sit back, relax. We got a pretty good show here.
Please don't forget our U.S. veterans. Growing awareness for veteran suicide. Hashtag 22 a day, no more. Veterans, you always have a place here. There is a number in the description of all of my videos for some good folk that can help you if you are in despair. Hello guys, welcome to Blade Talk. Sorry for the long wait. We had some technical difficulties, some echo, some things we were trying to work out with the audio in the background. Of course, when you're about to go live, you know, things, anything will happen and does happen. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for sticking with us. And thank you to Tom Ritter. I see Tom Ritter in the room, and Tom Ritter is actually the guy that actually got this started. He kind of bridged the gap between us and Steve from Colonial Knife, and we're very happy to be doing our last Blade Talk of the year and ending it off with another great American knife maker. We've had a great year having some amazing, influential, amazing knife makers from, you know, all across the country with us. And we're happy to be kind of ending off our Blade Talk, having Steve on from Colonial Knife. And it's I had some talks with him. He's a great guy. This is going to be a good show. And without further ado, but before we get going, as you saw, you know, especially around this time of year, our channels and Blade Talk is dedicated to awareness for veteran suicide, for veterans and our active military. And that's all we're saying is active military and veterans, you have a place on our channels always. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Thank you for everybody in the room. I'll visit the chat as much as possible, but let's bring Steve and Scab into the room. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
How we doing, fellas?
Doing good, Joe.
People don't know the craziness in the background before we got on, but I'm glad to see you guys on and with no echo.
We lived through it. Well, listen, Steve, thank you for being here. Here's the deal, guys. I'm glad you said about Tom, Joe, because I want to throw some love to Tom Ritter. One, Tom's an awesome dude. Two, he's a vet. Three, he's old school YouTube. And the knowledge that you get from Tom is amazing. So I want to just take a second and throw some love Tom Ritter's way. He reached out to me. I reached out to Joe, and Steve's here. So that being said, Steve, tell us a little bit about you, the company, and then you guys have an agenda that y'all talk about, and we're going to do our best to disrupt that. So take it away, Steve.
All right. I hope I don't get too long-winded. I've been told that I can talk about this all day long. So my name's Steve Paulantonio. I'm third generation of the Colonial Knife Company. My kids make up the fourth generation. And we started in 1926. Prior to that, my grandfather had the A. Paulantonio Cutlery Company. He came to this country at the age of 13 from Italy and started in the blacksmith on a place in Providence called Federal Hill, in a small garage, which I'll get to, which leads to this story later on. Being in this small garage making knives, he used to get files from Nicholson File Company, which is in Rhode Island, and they made really durable steel files, and they would take the worn out files and make blades. So they were making 1 or 2 knives a day, very much what the custom guys are doing today. And World War I breaks out, and he enlists into the U.S. Cavalry and was a blacksmith in Europe during that World War I. And then when he gets out, he forms the A. Paulantonio Cutlery Company, is when it actually formed. And then he had 2 brothers. One was a foreman at Imperial Knife, which is in Providence, and another brother who worked at Meriden Knife Company in Connecticut. And in 26, the 2 brothers and my grandfather Antonio got together and formed the Colonial Knife Company. And I looked into that, like, why the Colonial name? Why use the name Colonial? And at that time period, that name was widely used, the word colonial. And I suppose that's why what they did. And they built the company up. They went through the Great Depression, World War II, a number of recessions. And so when I have a difficult time and thinking, what's going on, I think about them and being immigrants to this country, not really being able to write well or not academically educated. You know, they know what they knew from doing it. And they built a huge company. In Providence, Rhode Island, there were a number of knife companies, which I'm sure a lot of people aren't familiar with. There was Ideal Knife Company, there was Providence Cutlery, there was Imperial Knife Company. They had 2 factories here in Providence, and there was Colonial. My grandfather's sister married one of the founders of Imperial Knife, so there was always this unity. How much what you see today with knife makers and people getting together at the Blade Show and friendly conversations and trading information back and forth. So World War II came around, and the company was growing over the years. In fact, the location that they picked in Oneyville, Rhode Island, was the reason why they chose that location was because it was right next to the railroad's train station for freight. And back then, that's where they didn't use highway. They didn't have the interstate transportation highway that we have today. That wasn't put until the 50s for the Cold War. And so everything most goods moved by the railroad. So when my grandfather found this, it was an old textile mill, and it had already been up for a number of years, but they bought this old textile mill. And the reason why, one of the reasons is because it was right near the railroad, so they could get their products on the train and ship all over the country. Hold
on real quick. Just
sure.
quick interruption. So Colonial is old school knife royalty, really? Well, but here's the thing. We had John on from K-Bar, and there was that, and we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Colonial. But my point there is, there was that group in that area, and then your great-grandfather's group, or grandfather's group in that area. That's amazing. I didn't know. Do you have anything in your collection from what your grandfather would have made by chance?
I have a ton of stuff. In fact, I was told that I have the best collection of. They never threw anything away. I got documents. I've got the payroll records, the bookkeeper's logs. You know, everything's done in fountain pen. It was just
wow.
See, that's fascinating to me.
Wow. Somebody in the knife industry, one of the writers said, you have the largest collection of historical records, because when these companies were bought out or, new management came in, they throw stuff out that they didn't think was any good. My grandparents we don't throw anything out. I mean, right. The reason why you come to this country is because it's better here than where you're coming from. So they worked 7 days a week, and they threw nothing out. And that's why I have this huge record collection of documents, of correspondence with everything from Rin Tin Tin that they did with the licensing to military contracts, blueprints. I just haven't had knives and actual knives and different prototypes. The time to sit down and put it all together. I've had people want to come up here and do it. And I said, you know what, that would be great, but I need to be looking at this stuff myself. It's just so much.
Yeah.
That
because it's your blood doing it. Here's the thing, Steve, and we'll get back to the story. But I asked you about knives, but as you were talking about records and things, one of the things I work for All Metal Fabrication. We're in the old Liberty Steel building. So from time to time, those records show up, from the 40s or 50s. Yeah. I worked for Dixie Tank Company for years, and we bought the old Buffalo tank, which before that was Bethlehem, and you find the old punch cards. To me, it gives you a tie and a bond to the past. Your grandparents, yes, but you're seeing their employees, the pay stubs, the financial hardships they went through, the ups, the downs. That's amazing. So jump back in now that I've interrupted you. Jump back in.
Oh, no, I don't look at it as, I guess what you just said makes a lot of sense. And I guess you don't see that when you can't see the forest through the trees when you're,
right.
To hear your perspective on it is to me just always been there. So I guess maybe we don't appreciate the things until someone such as
What
yourself
exactly when you
said, like,
grow
you know
up with,
what?
and I can understand that because I grew up with a business within my family, and then we're going back about 45 years now, and people would say, "Oh, look where have you been?" And I'm like, you don't think about it because it's been part of you all your life. But when somebody kind of, yeah, I could totally see where you're coming from there, 100%.
Well, I'll tell you this: when I worked at Dixie Tank, we took over Buffalo, which had been Bethlehem. So you're going back, and there's a tie-in here to the early 1900s when that big boom happened in the area you're with, and those companies started sprouting in relationships. One of the most interesting, saddest things to me, there's an old man, Papa Johnson, gave me my first case sod buster when I was 16 years old. And he said, son, if you think you'll cut yourself with it, I'll wait. 16, I said, no, sir. And I swear to y'all,
We always
I
cut ourselves.
opened it, cut myself. He took it from me, put it in his pocket. And on my 18th birthday, but I mentioned this, his son worked for him. They showed up one day with a guard at the gate. The guy had cut all their throats, basically. They hadn't had insurance. They hadn't had gone, right? Gone. When we moved in, I was able to find time cards and things like that. They went back 3 generations. I was able to hand that to them. It wasn't a consolation, but it meant to the world, to the son, after Papa Johnson had gone. So what I'm saying is you have a treasure trove there of not just knives, which are probably amazing, but that information. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah. Now, when you say Bethlehem, were you talking about Bethlehem Steel?
Yes.
I used to buy their steel from.
Really.
I was a purchasing agent at the company when I'm 61 now, but when I was in my 20s, the first job in the office, let's say, because we all had to work in the factory. No,
so
you got to be shown any favoritism, right? So, and that's all we'd hear about. Well, Grandpa, we used to work on Sundays and Saturdays and all that kind of stuff. So, but when I was offered the position, I used to have the steel salesman come in, and they flew me down to wasn't Bethlehem, but Coshocton Stainless, I believe it was, one of the mills down there. Amazing to see. That's Americana. That is so cool to see industry going like that, which is unfortunately you don't see that today. But
not as much.
Go down there. So where was I?
Sorry. Yeah, let's pick up about World War II. Because of your Italian heritage, I was going to ask you how that fared for your grandfather and his brothers going into World War II in that climate.
I asked that question of my father, and for instance, I said, Dad, how come you don't really speak Italian? Yeah. He said, we weren't. Grandpa didn't want to speak Italian. He wanted to be Americans, and Italy was a country of theirs where they came from, but they were Americans first, and so it wasn't that their heritage. Now I know people from let's say Spain or Italy or whatever, and I'll ask, do you teach your kids the language? Yeah, we try to, and it's always nice to have a second language to speak. But in my grandparents' house, they were just not that they discouraged it, but they spoke English, and that was their thing. My grandfather during World War II was a air raid warden for his neighborhood. When they wore that World War I style hat with the civil defense thing on it, and would go around and make sure you had your lights turned off during an air raid and all that kind of stuff. But they were Americans first, U.S. citizens first, and which I found interesting because nowadays, I don't want to go, but people hang on to their where they came from more than they do hang on to onto here. It's just a different time. I think when my grandfather came here, but like I said, you don't come to another country to live if things are going good for you where you are.
No,
and I think
usually what it is,
I think they were grateful. And it was one of these things where you break your back, you do the hard work, you can make something of yourself. That's what this country can do. You put your effort into it. You break your back. Now, it takes some good luck. I mean, good fortune, but like I have a friend, and he said, everyone looks at my success, but 99 is perspiration, 10% is inspiration.
That's good.
Hard work makes good luck. People don't realize that.
Yeah, they see the success, but they don't see what benefit or what they had to go through. I have that conversation with my wife every once in a while regarding I work too many hours kind of thing. And I think back, like my grandfather was never home. He worked 7 days a week. And I remember the employees would tell me on Sundays, they'd come in there and they'd have to clean the trenches where all the grinding machines, where all that water and the grit from the grinding machines would have to let it be cleaned out. And, they didn't ask the employees that you do it alongside us. It's kind of like the leadership thing. I'm not going to order you to do it. I'm going to do it along with you. And okay, World War I comes around, and they start adding to the factory. My grandfather served on the War Production Board, they call it, in Washington D.C., and that was the War Production Board for cutlery companies allocated steel, who was going to get what steel, because they're rationing everything, and you couldn't make anything other than. You weren't going to get any steel unless you're going to make military knives. It was such rationing like that. So. He served on that board through that period, and we made a couple of different knives, the pilot survival knife, which I have back here, and the Navy deck knife. And as the company was growing, because I remember saying to my dad, how come Imperial Knife has these 7-8 levels and we're all on one level? And he said, Grandpa did a time I don't know if it was a time study, but he said they wasted a lot of time on the elevators going up and down from the different polishing departments and grinding department. Grandpa thought by having it all on one level, it was a 90,000 square foot factory. You would just move everything. When things want to get stuck on the elevator, and that created a faster production. And I thought, well, that was
90,000 square feet.
Huh?
90,000 square feet.
90,000 square feet. We had 300 employees.
Yeah.
Okay, that's huge.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we did everything in that. We did the stamping of the blades. We did the heat treating. Everything was done internally, and you had to, because we were doing the hundreds of thousands of blades. You couldn't send that stuff out. It was just, and back then everybody was busy.
Yeah.
We had a tool program, a tool room, because every blade, every knife had a component. Each of those components had its tool, and we were either maintaining the tools or making new tools. So we had an apprentice program. So bring in young people and teach them how to be a tool maker. And what killed that was the CNC machine, and we don't use tools anymore. Yeah. And you're only using tools. We had 4 60-ton presses, L&J presses, that would stamp out 120 strokes a minute, 8 hours days, 5 days a week. That's a lot of blades and components and springs you're making, right? And as the market changed, we went from selling millions of knives a year to hundreds of thousands of knives a year to tens of thousands of knives to thousands of knives, where nowadays people are doing everything on, you don't have that kind of volume going on, so everyone is either water jet or CNC cutting the stuff out, and it's nicer to do the CNC because it's a clean cut. You don't have all that grinding operations and all that kind of stuff you have to go with it. So I digress. Where do I go from here?
So yeah, and the thing is this, Steve, I interrupt a lot. I apologize, kind of, sort of, but I don't. But the thing is, and I'm looking behind you, I'm seeing the knives, I'm hearing, see a lot of this stuff, man, I wouldn't have known without Tom or Isaac Knives and Knowledge. And the thing is, what I would like to do with not just this Blade Talk, but moving forward, is get Colonial out there, because you guys do go back. You do go way back. There's something to be said for that. There has to be something to be said for that. Now, you guys had a notepad full of stuff, so I'm going to go to Joe so we can stay on track and quit interrupting. But man, I am amazed. So it was your grandfather that started.
He started the A. Paul Antonio Cutlery. His two brothers, one worked at Imperial Knife and the other worked at Meriden Knife Company in Connecticut.
And they come together.
They came together in 26 to form
in 26. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Now, in 26.
One last question. I'm going to give it to Joe. I'm fascinated by that because I'm a history freak. Okay. World War I, Italy was our allies. World War II, they were on the Axis.
Right.
The fascinating thing to me with your grandfather is the cavalry, because there in World War I, we see that transition of the cavalry. And there were, unfortunately, a couple of cavalry charges in World War I, but they kind of went away.
Right. Mechanized, the tank took care of that.
Yeah.
The machine gun.
Tanks ended that. But now, did you know your grandfather?
Yeah, I was in junior high, 8th grade when he passed away.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I wish I had, my wife asked me yesterday, said, when did you start working at Colonial? And I said, 16.
That was my next question.
Yeah. And she said, well, what about before then? I said, I didn't even know where the place was.
Really?
Yeah. When I was 15, my first job was a camp counselor.
Okay.
And then I turned 16. My father said, you got to go to work now. Like, oh, what does that mean?
Work.
Yeah.
I got you. So Joe, let's get on that list, because there was a lot of good questions and a good strategy that you guys had that I screwed up. So let's get into that.
No, it's more just like conversation that we had yesterday, covering a couple topics, and we actually had a great conversation last night, Steve and I, and I tried to kind of make notes of some things we brought up, but I was enjoying the whole history behind everything. This was awesome. I mean, I actually wish my son was in the room, because my son is he loves American history. He's actually majoring in American history. He wants to become like an American history teacher. So he's in college doing that right now, and I think he would actually be enjoying this. Yeah, I should get him together with you, Scab, because you guys will talk for hours.
Steve started talking about the history.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking with Colonial, and it's my own fault. When we come into these, Steve, I don't do a lot of research. I really don't, because a lot of times I feel like if I did a lot of research, I'm not going to try to sit here and tell you facts or know more about what you do than you do. So a lot of the history of your company, first time hearing it, I'm absolutely amazed. I would ask you mentioned a Navy deck knife.
Mm-hmm.
Can you show that? Would you show that?
Yeah.
Do you have one close by?
Yeah. Well, this am I pointing in the right direction? Yeah, that board right there.
Yeah.
I've got to ship a bunch of them out this week.
Because
can I move from the camera to go get one?
Do what you do. Yeah. Believe me, we'll talk enough. You'll be fine. The reason I'm asking him this, Joe, is during wartime, when they start that rationing of steel, they tell you what you're making, right? Like, they're not going to give you steel and you decide, hey, I'm going to go make a bunch of EDC pocket knives.
Right.
But they'll come take that. But I'm fascinated by the allocation. What did you make? And the other thing, and you know this too, Joe, that area, that whole Northeast area, not only was the country kind of born and start there, but the industry that's there. And Steve even took some of the marrying in and across companies. So you see that bloodline go.
Yep.
So I'm really curious about the knives at that point to see what they were allocated. The other thing is to see kind of where we've come from with production from then till now, you know?
Oh, I know what you might want to see as well. All right, because there's a little.
Let's do this one first, and then we'll.
Yeah.
Well, it's all part of it. Here it is the Navy deck knife. Now, the difference between this and the actual one, World War II, is the USN on the one that was used during World War II is on this side.
Okay.
And Colonial Providence RI is on this side, and we did that intentionally so you could distinguish between the original and the reproduction.
Now, how many of those would you guys have made during wartime?
I have all the purchase orders, and I've never added them up.
Well, we'll do a second show. I've already determined you're coming back, so don't worry about
Okay,
that.
thanks.
Don't worry about that. But and I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's focus on the here and now. This part, and to everybody watching, we will have Steve back, and we're nowhere near ending. But I want to do a show with you on history. I just want to do history,
Okay.
and we'll do, say, Joe, what do you think? World War II back.
I like that. I think we could do that. I
But
think we could definitely do that. But let's talk about,
let's move into here and now.
Yeah. So just looking towards the list. So Steve, we had spoken about being an American knife maker in modern times, struggles of being an American knife maker. You want to talk about that, in relation to kind of where we were yesterday? Also, the cost, because we were talking about also why the cost of American knives is higher than other places, and
Sure.
and also why the quality of American knives and the warranty can get you a lot further. So just I'll leave it up to you.
Okay. Well, I'll go back by stating that, I'll start with back in the day when there was a huge or no imports, let's say.
Yeah.
So you had Imperial, you had Camillus, you had Schrade, you had who else did I mention? Colonial. We had these huge operations making millions of knives a year. There was, as my dad would say, you'll never see that time period again when there was no competition from overseas. It was all U.S. and you needed a huge operation. You needed millions of dollars to get going, unless you're going to make knives by hand. And then you got lucky and it grew and it grew. So what I've seen is a number of companies close. And what's happened with the market is you can get into the knife business nowadays and I've seen this, and this is what I was saying about my grandfather started on this area called Federal Hill in Providence, where in a garage making files, sticking Nicholson files and making blades out of that stuff, making 1 to 2s a day. I went to visit a friend of mine who has a knife place in Ohio. And I wanted him to make a couple of samples for me so I can test the market. Back in the day, you'd have to make the entire knife and spend $100,000 for all the components to make the knife. And it took you 2 years, and then you had to work out the bugs and all this kind of stuff. But when it comes to fixed blades, with the machinery they have today, you don't need any tooling. Tooling can run anywhere between 12 to 15 grand to make it like a stamping tool. And then you have all the secondary operations that go with that. So there's a lot involved before you even knew if you could sell this and bring it to market. And then after you'd have make the samples, then you wait till the big shows, the hardware show in Chicago or New York, and then you present it to your sales force. So you had you had to lay out money and not see any returns for a good 2 years versus now. So I got to see my friend in Ohio. I said, listen, I need a tomahawk. I don't want to tool up for it. I don't want to deal with that. And I don't know how well it's going to do. Gave him my design. He designed it within that while I was there. And he had a plasma cutter, the size of a pool table. And now I'm in a 2-bay garage. And I'm thinking, this is how my grandfather started. Talk about coming around full circle.
Yeah.
And this is stuff you could not have done, I'm going to say 20 years ago, 30 years ago. This stuff wasn't really around unless you had big dollars and you had people who were trained on this stuff. But now you can get a lot of stuff at auctions, and a friend of mine's an auctioneer, and this stuff's readily available. Anybody, if you go to Harbor Freight, you get half the stuff you need. I mean, they're using wet vacs as a dust collector.
Yeah.
We had these huge things on top of our roof, and it's just amazing the size that we had of to suck up all this dust are coming in. Then people are using our wet vacs with some PVC piping, and it's like, that's so cool. that's the greatest thing about this country is the ingenuity. You give this Americans, us a problem, we'll solve it. We'll figure it out because we're the. I'm getting off base there. I'm getting a little excited.
You're good.
Oh, go.
I just like people say, "Oh, this country, the country." I said, you know what? There's no better country than this country, and we're the underdogs. We're like the mutt. You know, the pure breed. They're wacko. It's the mutts. Makes the best dogs. That's my opinion. So, so he's making a knife of this tomahawk for me, and we're having a conversation. He hands it to his partner, and brings it over to me. They black oak. They used a powder coating on it. I wanted it black, and he grinds the thing, grinds it. And I'm looking at it. This is all within like 40 minutes. The grind that he was able to do with a sanding belt was equal, if not, well, it was equal to $100,000 German Siebmann machines that we have that do the same grinding. And he did it with a sanding belt with a wet vac. And I thought, oh my goodness, the whole industry now in my world was flipped upside down and thinking, this is the coolest thing ever. But anybody now can be in the knife business, where you see the show directory, and there's more and more people, and like a new company is always popping up. And I'll run into these people in my travels, and I'll tell them what I do. They, oh yeah, my son-in-law is into the knife making.
Yeah.
And as they go on, they say, I wonder when he's going to start making some money with this. And luckily, that they have a wife that's a nurse or something, and they get health care and all that. But I heard, who was it? One of the big guys in knives started I can't think of his name. It was about 20 years ago. Started a U.S. knife company. And I said, why the heck would you do that? I mean, okay, because you can get the product from China or Japan or overseas. It was crap in the beginning, like anything else. And they've been able to, in the last 30 years, make some decent stuff. In fact, most of our steel that you see is overseas steel.
Yeah.
The old Colonial, I'll get someone call me up and they say, I get this old Colonial I found in my drawer or whatever. Can you tell me anything about it? The first thing I'll say is that steel, you can't get that steel anymore. That's made U.S. steel.
Original stuff. Yeah.
That's right.
That's the best. That'll hone really. It's just versus the stuff we get today. A lot of it comes from overseas, and the reason why is because the cutlery industry is so small. Now we think, because as a purchasing agent back when I was younger, I'd have these conversations with the grinding wheel companies, Norton, and then they'd come in, because we buy so much of that stuff. And well, why don't you guys put more effort into our industry? And they laughed at me, like, because you're small. You're not like the auto industry or the appliance industry, Maytag. Yeah, I mean, the knife industry, it was big to us or to me because that's what I knew. But and the whole scale, like the aircraft, Boeing, and all that. I mean, no, you guys we can't put money into that.
Let me ask you this, Steve, because I say this a lot, but you're coming from a different vantage point. I feel like we're in the golden age of knives as far as choice and all that. But when I talk to you guys, who's centuries worth of knife, when would you say the golden age of knives was?
Yeah, in your outlook.
In your outlook, from your perspective.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by that.
I think it's ongoing.
Okay.
I mean, look at what's going on. I mean, it's the greatest thing about now is well, for instance, I went over to China on several occasions, and well, I'm gonna go with this. It's a world economy.
Yeah.
And the studies have shown that you can come up with two items that are very similar. And one's going to be U.S. made and selling for, let's say, $100. The other one's going to be $39.99. Hands down, the $39.99. And as much as people say, I only want American made, when you got to put food on the table and pay your bill,
that's right.
What can I tell you?
Let me ask you this while I got you here. One, we are actually sponsoring a knife making competition. And when you were saying that, I was kind of smiling because we are seeing, I feel like we're seeing a surge in knife makers. Matter of fact,
Yeah.
Joe, I got our first knife in for the competition
Oh, did
yesterday
you? Okay.
from Cat. So when you see this, it's got to be encouraging. Like when you went to your buddies, and it's got to be encouraging to see that. I feel like we're seeing a groundswell of people going, hey, I can make that.
Right.
And we got the next generations coming up and coming on and doing. So I guess my
Killer.
question,
I'm sorry.
my question was, no, you're good. As far as like when you're talking, and I'm thinking about my grandfather going through the Depression, how a pocket knife would have been gold to them. It wouldn't have, I've got 100 of them, right? Literally. They had one. So it had to last. It had to hold up. It had to, and I think we lose sight of that. I think we lose. So when you're talking about making hundreds of thousands of knives, in my mind, I'm going, yeah, because everybody had to have one. Everybody needed one.
They
So
had
that's where I was with that.
Yeah, well, when I was a boy, I'm 61. So when I was a boy in elementary school, we all had pocket knives.
Yep.
It was not unusual to have a pocket knife. No one stabbed each other. If you had a fight in the schoolyard, it was fist. You didn't take your pocket knife out. It never even occurred to you to take your pocket knife out.
No.
Oh God, that was
We
a
all have
different
pocket
world.
That would have killed you.
My goodness.
Now, when I used to fly to see customers, because after purchasing, I became a sales manager for the company, and I would travel all over the country and work with my salesmen. I'd go with a knife roll, get on the airport in Providence. There wasn't any security, and if you did get asked what's in there, you unroll it. They look at it. Wow, this is really cool. Who do you work for? Oh, yeah. You know my mother.
God.
She used to work there. My aunt.
They'll throw you against the wall if you did that today.
And then you roll up your knife roll and get on the plane and go. No big deal.
That's amazing.
What's killed the knife industry is, first of all, people don't carry knives like we did years ago.
That's right.
I give my son a knife, and I said, now don't bring this to school because you'll get suspended.
Yep.
And I feel so odd saying that, because you can't get on a plane, you'll get your knife confiscated. You can't go into a kid can't. The future of the knife business are young people, young boys, young girls. Where you can't bring a knife to school just to have a utility item,
right?
Because they'll suspend you. So with the airlines not wanting a knife on the plane, and kids can't carry knives any longer, it's hurt the marketplace considerably. Where you can't use knives if you take a knife out, you go to a restaurant or something and take your pocket knife out. Where I'm from, anyways, in New England area, where it's
New York is worse. New York is worse.
They think you're a nut.
Yeah.
You haven't seen any of my shorts, have you?
No.
Try to pull one up, Joe, if you can. I go, when we eat lunch, I usually take a fixed plate.
Let me see if I can find one. Hold on.
And I take a ridiculous fixed plate, and I cut my sandwich with it. To your point, and I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, my son is 31 or 32 now. He's a police officer over in Alabama. When he was in kindergarten, first grade, I get a call at work, and the lady is just absolutely losing her shit. And I said, man, I thought my son was hurt. So now my boss is walking in. I'm going, dude, I've got to go. He said, what's up? I said, I don't know. He goes, go. And she's like, well, we're going to have to call the police. I said, man, my son had been with me on a Sunday. I've always, this is 25, 26 years ago. Here you go, Steve, on the screen. He had put a Swiss Army knife in his pocket.
Right.
And was using it at recess to open its snack. It was a major ordeal.
Right.
And that's where it began, I think, because when we were in school, we had pocket knives.
Right.
And you didn't if you pulled a pocket knife on somebody, your daddy was going to kill you. And if he didn't, we would. You know what? That never.
The teacher would hit you. You go home,
Yeah.
your father find out, and he hit you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our shop teacher, Mr. Crump, in ninth grade, one of the things we were required to carry was a pocket knife. Because when you come in my class, you'll have a pocket knife. If you don't have one, and he had a drawer, he said, there's one in here, and you'll learn to sharpen it. He did.
Wow.
In ninth grade, you do that now, and they'd have the teacher up on charges.
Oh.
There'd be marching in the street, and it's like, it's a tool. That's why I love having you guys on. The link to the past.
Yep.
That needs to be the future. So go ahead. I know I'm jumping in a bunch, but
well, I think that the golden age, the golden age means the past, and that was the time when I'm a fan of the classic pocket knife, the Scout type knives with bone handle and electricians. When you made a knife, let's say in 1926, whether it be a Boy Scout knife, an electrician's, that knife stayed a popular knife for decades.
Yeah.
And now with China, you can, it's like, what's new? What do you got new? We saw you last year at the show. What's new? You only got that? And well, here's the thing I got to say with that, because I was talking about that when I was in China, and I gave them a couple of things to make for me, and I was only there for a week, and I said, listen, I'm flying out tomorrow, so just mail it to me. They had to work all night. When I was leaving for the airport for my hotel, they showed up with a finished knife, and I thought, that's the type of work ethic my grandfather had.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the people that I'm dealing with at my company as running the show at Colonial, they would give me like, what? I'm going home, or today? No, and I thought that's when overseas is going to kick our butt, because they're hungry.
Yeah.
And they didn't need to give that to me the next day, but I know, because it wasn't something they had on the shelf. I gave them specific design. They had to work all night to make that, to give it to me. And like I'll call up our people that I get supplies from, and it's like, wow, you got 3 or 4 weeks for that, or no, we're shutting down for this time period. Like, it's just a different time. However,
listen, hard work beats skill every time skill doesn't work hard.
right.
I made that my motto. Hard work beats skill every time skill doesn't work hard.
Right.
And to me, it's not the skill that's suffering. It's the work ethic.
Right.
And you just said that. I'm doing nothing but reiterating what you said. And if you ask anybody, but it's almost like this too, Steve. In this day and age, it's like, well, if I'm working for you and you said, Scott, you work late. Well, I'm going home. Well, we need to get this done. Yeah, but you're making more money than me. That's the mentality that we have now. Well, you get more than I do. So I get it to a degree, but we've got to get back to a hard work. And that's not, listen, the stuff that can be accomplished in 8 to 10 hours a day, if we really got after it and we really worked. Right. And I'm not talking about a neck break, but I'm talking about at a solid pace. That people, for like my guys at work don't understand. They're like, oh, we got to work overtime. If we get it done in this time, we don't have to. Phones have killed that, because every time you look around, somebody's on the phone.
Yeah.
Texting. Look, hey, have you seen this? Every time. I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty.
Yeah, well, when they say you make more, that's why you can stay. It's like, well, yeah, but I've got more risks.
Right. But you hear that, don't you?
You're guaranteed a paycheck on Friday. I might not cash mine because I got to pay you and everyone else first. Or if I make a bad decision, I eat it. Yeah. So they always see the grass is greener on the other side type of deal.
Listen, this conversation we could have all day long, because we can go. I mean, you could say it's about the younger generation. It's about our kids. We got to push our kids a little bit more, because they feel like they're a little bit more. They feel too entitled these days, and it's just about also pushing them more to like a different type of work ethic. And I'm glad to say my son is a hard worker. My son knows that, he gets up at 4 a.m. He goes to college, he gets up at 4 a.m. just so he can get into work before class. and he'll do that and probably go to work after school for a couple of hours, just to bring
Right.
money in, and it's a work ethic that is kind of lost lost to the time right now. And but yeah, we can go on with this for a very long time, but that's a great conversation. But
Well,
let's sidetrack a little bit. And I want to go in, Steve, I want to go into basically two things. I want to go into American quality, why American quality can get you further. We'll talk about warranties. We'll talk about basically dedication to the craft. And I really want to go into like some of your products and who you think you as the owner, who do you think you're marketing to in terms of your specific products? So I'll leave, put the show on to you and you let
I'll
me know
start
about
with
that.
that first.
Yeah.
Prior to the internet, it was hard to determine who the market share was without spending a lot of money. And you can look at the other knife companies out there, but all of them are privately owned or owned by a bank or two, and they don't release any marketing information, so you can't really get a clear picture of what sales are and all that kind of stuff. But the internet now, you can trace your algorithms. You can see who your customer base is, where they're located, their age group, male, female. And that's been happening I guess the last 15 years for us. Maybe we're a little bit late getting onto the internet. The savvy guys did it a lot sooner. So we can track now what our customer base is. Now we have a commercial. We have a what we call business to business, where we sell our product to one of our customers is called Hamilton Marine out of Seaport, Maine. They have 7 stores, and they're marine store. So we have retailers that we sell to, and they resell the item. And then we have the online sales, which gives us a real clear picture of who it is. And it's the age group is 50 and older. And I've heard this recently, is that's the best age group to have because they have the disposable income. I heard also that there's something like 7 million men aged 25 to 45 in the US who have just given up working and doing anything. And they said, you know what? I don't want to take on this responsibility. I don't want to have a wife. I don't want to have a family. I'm just going to, with COVID happening, they've given checks and they thought, if I can live a modest with this government subsidized money, I don't need to go and break my back. Why should I? Why should a man have to take on all the responsibilities? Well, because you need a purpose, but I don't want to go there. And that the disposable income now is this age group of 50 and older who are retired and they have cash. They invested in, so that's a good place for us. Now I was at the National Hardware Show in Las Vegas a few years back before COVID, and I had this fella from Honeywell. He was a VP at Honeywell, and he kept hanging out of my booth. I'm like, what's up with this guy? Why is he had Colonial as a kid. And his dad had it. It had Colonial knives, and he was so thrilled that Colonial Knife was at this large national hardware show in Vegas, and he came by and he was a venture capitalist in Manhattan, and Honeywell took him on. Now Honeywell doesn't make really anything; they buy companies, thermostats and safes and whatever it is, alarm systems, and they throw the name Honeywell on there. And his job was when him and 7 others were to go out there and buy up companies. And he had 3 companies in Rhode Island that he already had bought for Honeywell. But he was hanging out in our booth, and he was really excited to see us there. And he was never at his booth. He was always in mine, and we would just talk. In fact, it was a good conversation we had, because I'd have people come by the booth, the people who working the show, and the laborers, the maintenance people would come by, and maybe I gave them a knife the year before, and they came by and said, "Hey, I want to shake your hands. Thanks. I love your knife. I love your knife." And he saw this happening throughout the 3 days of the show, and he said, "How come you don't ask them to go online and tell them how great what they just told you? Don't say it online." I said, what are you talking about?" He said, "We all do this. You got it when you got somebody who come into your trade show booth, and they sing your praises, you need to tell them, to ask them to go online and give a good review. But I'm thinking, like, doesn't that sound kind of like obnoxious? I mean, tell everybody I'm a great guy or my business. No. He said, we all do it. And that's what you have to be doing, because people, when they have a bad experience, they can't wait to tell everybody. When they have a good experience, they don't tell anybody. You go to a restaurant, you have a good meal. All right, I might tell somebody, but when you have a bad experience, you can't wait to get home to tell everybody.
Goes a lot further.
That's been a little difficult to get people to say, hey, do you mind writing a review for me on that? And especially my audience, a lot of the time they call on the phone, which doesn't happen much anymore.
Right.
And you can tell they're just by their tone that they're older. And I'll always ask, do you have access to the internet? And no, they don't. So, I have to get my notepad out and take an order like the old days. And so my customer base is that. So my point is that what has happened is in the 1980s, we did, I guess I did it, went in, we started doing private labeling, and we did that for 30 years. And what that was is that we made one of our first customers, when that was Smoky Mountain Knife Works. We did all the Smith & Wesson knives. We did the Riders of the Silver Screen and the Red Ryder knives and all that kind of stuff. And I get a call from Kevin Pipes. This answers the question. I'm leading to the answer. And I get a call from Kevin Pipes, who one of the owners of Smoky Mountain, and he knows everybody in the industry. And he said, "Listen, Buck Knives is looking for just get another label out there. Will you talk to him?" And yeah, sure. What do they need? He said, "Well, I'll introduce you to last name was Gregory. He's not there anymore." So we spoke to them on the phone. And Kevin made introductions. We flew out there and we made a line for them called Ultra Blade, which wasn't all that much of a success for them. But what was happening though was we kept taking our name off the knife. You never saw Colonial. You saw like Coast Cutlery. We did all the knives for Coast, for David Brands. We did the Ultra Blade line. We made knives for all the Smith & Wesson pocket knives, Dave Scott, Taylor Cutlery, all that stuff. And that went on. It was lucrative. It was wonderful. It was like a cash cow. But what happened is now I'm on the road calling on these accounts, and they said, "Colonial, never heard of you."
Yeah.
Now these guys are in their 30s, right? They're younger, and never heard of you. Where you been? Well, we've been making knives for nearly this probably was 70 years, and that really hurt us, was to take our name off.
Take it off.
And if you call up any of my competitors, they will co-brand. They won't take their name off. And that's what was like, aha, okay. And so we co-brand now. But that was thing that 30 years, those 3 decades, or close to that, is what had us out of the limelight, because people weren't seeing the name anymore.
And that's a long time. 30 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Especially in marketing and things like that. That's a long time.
We lost a lot, and I take the, like I said, but it was lucrative. It was cash cow. It was we made a lot with that. However, you reap what you sow, right?
Yep.
They came around and bit us in the butt. Where now I'm going after these other accounts. Never heard of you. Oh, okay. Well, how do I establish my credibility? Well, okay. So then we made this poster to show how many years we've been around with our military knives, and like World War II, Colonial was there, and we just made a flyer to show customers at the trade shows, and then we started getting orders for the stuff. Like, well, we don't actually make this stuff now. We just wanted to show you like a history. And then it's like, we're sitting at a dinner after the trade show, sitting around having drinks and dinner, and why don't we make this stuff? What better, right? What better marketing than that?
Yeah.
So our customer base, there's an age group of, let's say, under 50, between that don't know Colonial per se, because you fellas, you probably All right, here's how it usually happens. Now, I was calling on Stanley Tools, and we're selling them product with their name on it. But before that could happen, and Irwin, before that could happen, they weren't really sure who we were, Colonial Knife. And you didn't have the internet to really, you had a Thompson register where you could go through and check things out, but you really didn't have like the internet where you could verify who's who. And I get a call months later from the marketing manager or the product manager from Irwin Tool or whoever, Cooper Tool. And, hey, Steve, I just wanted to let you know, my granddad passed away, and I'm going through his stuff, and I found a Colonial Knife in his drawer from, what he had 40 years ago. They're all excited that they found this knife with Colonial on it. And that's the same thing over and over again. Someone finds a knife, they're younger, they're cleaning out the grandpa's drawer, unfortunately passed away, or a toolbox and going through a shed or whatever, and they, Colonial, cool. And so there's a nostalgia.
Yeah.
Should I say that? I mean,
hey, listen, just glancing in the chat room here and there, there's people that are coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh yeah, I got a Colonial Knife for Christmas back in '89." Maurice had said, and there's a couple people like, "Oh, I know why. Now I know why the company looks familiar," because it's just people coming out of the woodwork and they're remembering, they hit the history of the company,
which is awesome.
Yeah,
I'm curious, Joe, with that, and my mom had actually posted that my great grandmother had two things in her apron at all times: peach snuff and a pocket knife.
that was your mom, right?
That was my mom.
That was your mom. Shout out to Cheryl,
Yeah.
Scab's mom. Yeah.
So it's fascinating. So what we need to do now is get that name back out there, because it's there. It's sitting. It feels like it's sitting right here on the periphery, and we just need to bring it back in.
Yeah.
Right. Because people, like Joe said in the chat, now I remember. So even though 30 years is a long time, I don't think it would take a whole lot to bring it back in. And that's what you're doing now with Tom and Isaac and those type of things. And from what do you have knives where you can put your hands on them and we can see a couple? Because I know some of the guys, I saw one.
Yeah, right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you want? Yeah. Oh, you got a minute?
Yeah, go.
Oh, yeah, I got some really cool stuff.
Go right
Joe,
ahead.
while he's doing that, the last review Isaac did, it shouldn't be but 2 or 3 ago, it was of a Colonial Knife. Can you find that? Because I really, really like the shape and the look of that knife. And Isaac did a great job. He's really, really coming into his own there. He did a great job with the knife.
He's also really passionate about the. Oh, here it is, Isaac Knives. Okay.
And then you've got Tom, who just brings the years of experience from the military and from just witchcraft. Blackie Thomas knows who Tom Ritter is very, very well.
9 days ago, there's 2 of them. You know what? Let me actually just bring it on the screen.
Yeah, pop it up, because
let me bring his page on the screen.
And then we'll show a few knives. But that's kind of
all right. So you have this one.
Drugs. Let's see.
9 days ago. Then this is the quick flick knife.
He did a fixed blade though. I just saw. Maybe it was a little longer back.
This is.
There was one he did that I'll look it up. I'll see if I can send you the link. But he did an amazing job, and I love the look. It was a Colonial fixed blade. It might have been.
I think it's this one. I think it's this one.
That's it.
Is it a CE 400?
See this?
Yes.
This is a World War II pilot survival knife. Donations. And it's packaging that I just pulled it out of a box that hasn't been. This wax paper is the original wax paper.
Really?
It hasn't even seen.
Holy
daylight.
Smokes, man!
But here's the knife right here.
The survival knife. Now,
survival knife.
Steve, look on screen real quick at the one Isaac's holding there.
Oh, CE 400. Yeah.
How much is that knife?
It's we're doing a special two for one. It's like $145.
That's it for that knife.
Wow, that's a good price.
Yeah,
I love that knife, man. I love the look.
That is nice.
All
I
right,
wanted
Joe,
it
bring
really
Steve
thick.
back up.
to the point where you can almost hammer it into something and stand on it, where you couldn't break the blade.
It's just a good looking knife.
Yeah.
It's very clean.
Abe Elias was the designer for that out of Canada. Sparrow spouting. What was his? Can't think of the name. But
It's a clean. I like the look of that. Joe, pop Steve back up by himself because I want to see the pilot's knife he has.
Okay, here it is in the
That's amazing.
Never been out of this. This is the packaging from World War II. It's still in the wax paper. But here's what it is. How do I get that over here? Now this saw is to cut aircraft aluminum. People think it's a wood saw, and it's not. It's to cut out of the aircraft aluminum. And what you find a lot of these, but you find the saw broken because people are using the saw and they bend it, they break it.
Yeah.
Scab, your eyes are glowing right now. I know.
Oh man, that thing.
saw.
Well, the knife. That's a big knife, man.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
It's a sweet knife.
And just now, they would have received them in World War II in that packaging you were showing. You would have shipped them to
right. Well, there'd be a sheath that came with this.
Right.
I have a display case in my office with it's a canvas, kind of like you'd see in the World War II, kind of like a canvas pouch that says USN on it, that the pilots would carry, naval aviators. So
that is crazy cool, man.
Beautiful. And then I got a bunch of stuff. It's all in boxes, and I'm trying to clean up stuff. And I'm stacking stuff, not realizing anybody's going to look at this stuff. This is this material here is oh geez, slips my mind. But this stuff we would grind it. It would come in sheets.
Okay.
And, I'm trying to think of the name of it. And we would collect the dust and throw the dust into the dumpster. And during the hot summer day, it would catch on fire, it would ignite.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I'm trying to think of the name of this material. It's deadly, though. This material is deadly.
They're good.
But you know what? I mean, it was during the time period where, why can't I say this? Like pearl, mother of pearl. You got to wear a mask. Mask when you're putting mother of pearl on a knife when you're sanding it, because the dust is carcinogenic. It will cause cancer. A lot of that stuff wasn't known.
Right.
Back then.
Right.
Celluloid. That's what this is. Celluloid.
Okay. Well, it's a cool looking, and these knives are bigger looking pocket knives. The first two.
Maybe because
that's normal.
It's that the fish looks bigger in the water, I guess. But
this
is a standard scout knife. This is a scout knife we've been making, I don't know, 100 years. And I've seen some cool ones with compass handles in them. We were nicknamed, I don't know who gave us this name, but a boy's first knife. So.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it was. Joe was mentioning, was it Joe or Tom Ritter mentioned to me that he bought a tent card, I got one around here somewhere, but it had 6 knives on one side and 6 knives on the other side, similar to this, that you pop out. And we would have these wagon jobbers show up in September to Colonial and Providence, and they would load up their van with all this cutlery stuff from us. And then they would drive to Florida, and in the route, you'd stop off at these mom and pops and sell them these display cards that we had. And they were affordable knives, and they get the nickname the boy's first knife. In fact, that's what got Kevin Pipes interested in us making the Red Ryder knives for him, because of that boy's first knife thing. So I don't know where that came from, but that's
a good little moniker, really.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And that's so I got a bunch of switchblades too that we manufactured. classic styles. I brought some to the Blade Show, the year before COVID, and people went crazy for those things. And we've been asked to make those again, but unfortunately, what I find is, you can't sell 100 pieces.
Right.
And what happens is the collectors come and they grab them, and then after the collectors get them, nobody else wants them. It just so what's a cutoff point to bringing? For instance, we made the Mark I Navy deck knife, brought that one back first because it was a fixed blade versus versus this pilot knife, which is multiple bolsters. There's two bolsters on each side, and the hand of the liners and all that. Some serious cash would have to be laid out to make this one. So we thought, well, why don't we just make the easiest one first, which is a fixed blade?
Yeah.
And it went really well. Like anything else, you introduce it, and all the collectors got them. And then the people who buy that now are the reenactors, that seems to be a huge group, the reenactors, and Navy guys. Anybody Navy have, my father was in the Navy. I want to get this knife for him, or my son's deploying. I want that. It's funny about the deployment. We make the paratrooper knife, the M724. You guys familiar with that?
I'm actually trying to bring that up right now. Paratrooper
knife? One around here somewhere. Well, it has a national stock number, so military units carry it, and we have a lifetime warranty on those things. It's difficult to offer a lifetime warranty on. Okay, during that boy's first knife, what my grandfather was able to do is one of the things to cut down costs is make the factory all on one level. But also what they did is two other things they did is back before the tumbling. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, right here.
So I get one of those back, right, from a fellow who served over in Afghanistan, the desert, the sandbox, what you want to call it. And he wants it repaired. We basically rebuilt the knife for him and sent it back. And he calls and he's speaking to me and he was really upset. What happened? That handle, his buddy who was serving with him injured, died, but there were marks on the handle that him and his, I don't know what the whole story goes, but it meant a lot to him to have that handle. And we're looking at it as well. This is all scratched up and marked. So we put new handles on and threw the handles in the trash. Man. He said, I gotta have that handle. I gotta have that handle. I'm glad what you did to the knife, but I need those handles. So I'm in the trash that afternoon, rummaging around for those two handles. Finally, I was able to find the handles, put them back on the knife for him.
Wow.
And he didn't want my thing is that they get attached to the knives.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we all do, right? We for me, I'm working in like the ice cream shop and I got all these flavors and like, ice cream again, I'll have pizza. But a lot of people get hooked on their knife. And I find that especially with our knives. Now I know people like, well, I like so-and-so company and I like that company and I like that. But there's I don't want to say they name their knife, but they get attached to it very much and it has a lot of memories. And that's nice to see that because we live in such a throwaway society that's right. To be able to rebuild a knife. Oh, so what my grandfather had done is went to tubular rivets. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Everybody else, like these colonials here, have nickel silver pins. Oh, that's the other thing about these knives. There is more nickel silver, 18% nickel silver in these bolsters. So when I get someone to call me up and say, "Can you tell me about my knife?" and I'll say the first thing I'll say is, first of all, that blade steel is Pittsburgh, PA, U.S. grade steel. You're not getting anything better than that.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing is that these bolsters are 18% nickel silver.
Wow.
There's more nickel in this than there is in the U.S. nickel.
That's crazy.
I think that's awesome. And this is genuine. This is brass. These are brass liners. Just the material alone, you don't see this anymore. And one of the reasons why you don't see this anymore because you need a a large production to make these things. And when we redesigned the or upgraded that paratrooper knife, it was the old Camillus MC1. And when they went out of business, we got a call from the government GSA and said, will you make this for us? Like, yeah, I'd love to. And so we upgraded the number. You know that the old 50s switchblades had that, I call it the leaf spring. You left it compressed for a long time, it had a memory, it would stay closed. You should find these old switchblades. I tell them, don't store those old switchblades in the closed position. Open those blades up so that spring doesn't get compressed and stay that way. So we put in the we looked at a $300 switchblade and oh, look at that, they're using a torsion spring. Oh, that's cool. Let's put that in it instead. And really beefed up the knife oh, okay. So we wanted to have, when you have tubular rivets, once those rivets compress, you can't take that thing apart.
Yeah.
It's not coming apart. And if you cinch down on it too much, you end up with this big pile or barrel, 55-gallon drum barrel of all these knives that were just can't go anywhere because they were just the rivets are too tight. So we use what everyone else does nowadays, all the custom guys, is we used the axles with the torque screws.
Okay.
So you can take it apart, which is nice.
Which is big.
The first problem we had with that is people were taking it apart to see how it worked.
Yeah.
The problem with that is it has springs in it, and the springs would fly. You get a call, hey, I lost my the spring deployment for the deployment button, or I lost the spring for that. Like, oh, okay. So then we started putting tamper-proof screws on there, and then but that we were having issues with that because who's got the tamper Allen wrench today? I don't know. We'll get 10 more of those because we can't seem to keep track of that. So then we went with back to the traditional torque screw with like a Loctite, and but people were taking the knives apart to say, oh, yeah, they would tell you they lost a spring and it just happened to come out of the knife, but you knew when they sent the knife back that you just were curious on how this thing worked. And having that my grandfather having the tubular rivet, they had Townsend riveting machines, and you'd stack we had a 5,000 square foot room with these women who would just stack the knife components on these pins and hit a button, boom, and it would rivet it together and it'd pop out. And they would do that all day long. But what it did is that it eliminated the process of, they did a couple of things. They went with cast bolsters instead of the nickel silver. So it was a tubular rivet design, which was really inexpensive. We'd get them from the regular, back in the day, there was a whole bunch of riveting companies that sold components like that in the Townsend riveting machines. And that cut the cost in half because when you didn't have the nickel silver pins, you didn't have the nickel silver bolsters, and you didn't have the guy hefting it on the wheel to get it right. So it cut down all that labor. Which made it the reason why you got the affordable boy's first knife, because it was an affordable knife. You're not going to buy your son his first knife. Well, here's the funny thing about this. I saw the price list from the 40s, and the knives retail were like $1.32 or something like that. Yeah. $1 went a lot further.
Oh yeah,
right.
Way further.
It's a nice comment from Gary here. He said, I have served for over 20 years in the military, and thank you, Gary, for your service, both Navy and Army, and own several Colonial knives. They are the best quality knife you can find, and I don't leave the house without carrying one. Thanks for sharing, Gary. Appreciate that. And thanks for your service.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate that a lot. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Get the testimonials. That's got to mean a lot to you.
But listen, I think there is just too much good stuff here, and I think we have to do another show. Steve, what do you think? Would you be open to coming on to Blade Talking again after the new year?
Whenever you ask.
Yeah, I definitely think we should come on. We should talk about your product more, talk about history also, because I know it's going to make Scab very happy. No, it's awesome. It was a great talk. It was very interesting. And a lot of people really just, front and center in the room and listening to all that, and they're enjoying it. But what I want to do is kind of just start ending this off. I want to talk about the new year coming in, and what the new year looks like to Colonial Knife. I mean, any new products, any new business ventures, or anything like that you want to share. Anything that you would want to share with everyone in the room right now.
Yeah. Well, I get a call from Steve over at Blade Magazine, because they're doing their what's new for 2024 U.S. made stuff is what they want to feature.
Right.
And we have a number of things. One is this oxygen tank key. Right there over there. This with the serrated blade on it. We also have this style knife here, which is new for 2000. Can I get that on the screen there? There you go.
I do the same thing, buddy. I go opposite way.
Yeah, the opposite. Yeah. And then we're introducing another new line of flashlights. A lot of things that people don't realize, I guess we have our survival kits and flashlights, things to add to the product mix.
Yeah, let me just cut in, guys. You have to really look at their website, because there's really some interesting stuff there. And I think it's not just about knives, it's just about overall survival, some things that you would need at your side for overall survival tactic. I mean, the flashlight was surprising to me to see. And it's something that basically everybody's going to look for. So yeah, definitely look at their website, because there's a lot of things other than knives that he sells.
Yeah, it's like we're the best kept secret, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
We're
trying to open up that and not make it a secret anymore.
we can help with that. That's not it. We can do something about that.
Greatly appreciate
it.
And
I want to. I want to. I am absolutely fascinated. The thing is this, and then I'm going to shut up because I'll keep rambling. I'd like, Joe, pull us all back up. I'd like to do two things. I'd like to do a historical show with Steve quickly within the next few weeks. I think that would be important. But then I'd like to do maybe a quick hitter show with Steve where it's just nothing but knives, where we show, because a lot of times as I'm looking at your stuff, it's in front of me now. You know what I'm saying? I'll go to the website, but I'd like to do a show where it's just maybe you pull 20 of knives that are the best sellers, etc., and we show those, because this has been a great getting to know show, and I want to do those too, Joe. I think they would work, and I think that would help. The historical one, and really we'll talk about it off air, but that historical one gave me an idea. I'd like to get a lot of guys together for a round table. Yeah. Because where you're sitting, Steve, is like the the hotbed, the mecca historically for knives, and there's something to be said that. I'm glad you come on, and I appreciate you. I'm going to turn it over to my brother Joe and let you do the do, buddy.
Scab, have a great day. Thank you.
Oh no, we're still on.
No, stay with us.
No, we're still on. But yeah, really just looking forward to kind of just branching this out into something else, and branching out the show and everything, and we're going to try to, I think it's a good idea to maybe make up like a panel, and maybe just do like that round table, and I know some people I definitely would want to invite, so that'll be awesome. But Steve, it was a pleasure to meet you, pleasure to speak to you. I mean, your enthusiasm is obviously there, your passion is obviously there, and you have such a long history. I mean, go back in your family, 1926. It's awesome. And it's I appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And looking forward to the new year and what, you have to bring, and pretty much all knife makers in America, what we're bringing to the table, what everybody's bringing in is going to be very exciting. And a lot of people even mentioned in the room, they think this is the golden age of knives right now. We're living in it. We're living in it. And there's so many options, so much good stuff out there, and people are so enthused about it. And this community is growing more and more and more. And even just this competition, Scab, that you're going is so huge. It's a lot bigger than you think it is. And I know this is the first annual, but it's a lot bigger than you think it is, because it's getting people involved. It's getting people like, you know what, I think I could do this. I
Yeah.
think that's really what it is. It's people for the first time are saying, you know what, I think I can do this. Let me give this a shot. Let's see how this works out. And when we finally get through this and all the entries are in, people are going to start thinking about the next one. So
Right.
it's pretty cool. So I'm really excited to see how this kind of turns out.
Me too.
Yeah.
So, hey, real quick, Steve,
Yeah.
when we go off, just stay on.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to do a lot. There'll be a long, awkward
Yeah.
pause where we just stare at each other, and then we'll go.
Okay.
We
So
can start talking bad about people in the room.
To everyone in the room, guys, listen, it's we are at the eve of New Year's. 2024 is upon us. Now, a lot of people say that, make New Year's resolutions and all that. I believe that instead of making a New Year's resolution, I would say, what less can you do in 23 and do less of it in 24 and make it better? So I think that's another way of looking at it. So I wish each and every one of you a very happy New Year, happy holidays. I hope you have a great time with family and friends. Be safe, of course, and prosperous and happy New Year to each and every one of you. And thanks for joining us this early in the morning on Blade Talk. Looking forward to our first Blade Talk of the year coming up. And thank you to everyone. Thank you to Steve. Thanks, Scab. And have a great one, everybody. Happy New Year. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Long pause.
Long pause. Here it goes.
Did you sign out, Joe?
Hold on, I'm trying to. Didn't take.